He thought he was walking into the happiest day of his life. A countryside estate, crystal lights, white orchids, every detail set for forever. But behind the smiles, the tucks, and the vows, a secret was rotting. The groom discovered a second phone, hidden affairs with younger men, even betrayal that cut into his own family. Instead of canceling, he planned the perfect revenge-printing every lie, staging every file, timing every reveal like a performance no guest could forget. At the altar, when hundreds of phones lit up with proof, love turned into war. His fiancée tried to fight back, but the truth was louder than vows, louder than music, louder than the slap that stunned the crowd. Yet when the dust settled, a final message arrived. You ruined my life, now it'll ruin yours. The wedding was destroyed, reputation shattered, but the game had only just begun. What happens when betrayal doesn't end with exposure? But with a darker war waiting in the shadows. We were 12 hours from due when the nurse said gently, "You tested positive." She kept talking treatment follow-up, avoid contact, but the words slid off the tile, 12 hours before the vows. The tux was pressed, and I had an infection you don't get in a closed relationship. I drove back toward Juniper Ridge, the countryside estate wed rented outside Nashville, hands clenched at 10 and 2. My fiancée Alex was there already, walking vendors through final details, smiling with that clean, practiced warmth that won rooms. Yesterday he called the place a modern chapel under open sky. Today it looked like a museum for a story I was no longer in. Rehearsal dinner had been at a rustic lodge set our beams, antique mirrors, too much bourbon. Heidi stood beside Alex while Tyler, one of the florists, barely 20 and eager to please, showed us mock-ups of the aisle pieces. Alex clapped him on the shoulder and laughed too hard at a bad joke. I pretended not to notice the way Tyler's hands shook when Alex leaned close to help adjust a ribbon. This morning, Alex said he'd swing by the caterer to fix a delivery issue and disappeared for 3 hours. When he came back, he smelled like mint gum, the cheap kind that burns for a second and then tastes like nothing. He kissed my temple and thanked me for holding it all together. There was a smudge on his collar he called espresso. I wanted to believe him so badly my teeth hurt. I set the clinic bag behind a stack of programs and rehearsed the kind of lie you only tell yourself. It's a mistake, a lab error. Stress does strange things to a body, but the truth sat between us like a third place, setting obvious, polite, unavoidable. At noon I walked the lawn where the ceremony would happen, counting chairs to keep my hands busy. The planner asked if I was excited. I said, because it was easier than explaining the sound in my head, that thin electric hum that starts when a building knows it's going to burn. I found the first real trace without meaning to. Alex had left his car keys on the console table, had promised to move the cars off the main drive before guests arrived. In his passenger footwell half, buried under escort cards, was a flattened pack of mint gum and a receipt from a gas station at 2:18 a.m. I was asleep at 2:18 a.m. The line item before the gum said discreet bag. I didn't know what that meant. I knew exactly what it meant. I put the receipt back where I found it. I tried to picture the two of us 10 years from now, telling a funny story about how wedding week turned me into a detective for a day, how silly I'd been, how faithful he always was. The image wouldn't load. By late afternoon, decorators strung crystal lights through the oaks. Alex looped an arm around my waist, warm and familiar. Almost there, he said, and for a second my body went soft on instinct, like a door that still remembers the key. Almost, I said back. I didn't tell him about the clinic. I didn't ask for explanations he had already prepared. I watched the way he blinked twice when the planner asked a simple question about timing. I watched his left hand twitch toward his pocket before he remembered his phone was on the charger. I watched Tyler avoid my eyes when he delivered a test boot near, and left so fast he forgot his jacket. At sunset we drove to the rented cottage where we were supposed to sleep separately for tradition. Inside, Alex had lit candles like we were 23 and reckless again. A glass of small, batch bourbon waited on the counter. To us, he said, and the sincerity in his tone was either the most dangerous part of him or the most human. I took a sip and it burned clean all the way down. He touched my jaw with 2 fingers and smiled, as if nothing in the world had ever been easier than loving me. Later, when he stepped into the shower, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the mirror above the dresser. My reflection looked like a man who'd been told a story and decided to clap anyway. I opened the top drawer for socks and found a lip balm wedged in the corner, not Main Spearmint, the exact brand in Tyler's open bag earlier. I turned it over like a small stone, then set it back where it wouldn't be missed. I slept in a kind of bright darkness, the kind where you see every shape in the room, and none of them are yours. At 3:11 a.m., a glow pulsed from under Alec's pillow-on short buzzai, knew by heart. He palmed the phone and turned away. The light painted the wall for a second and vanished. At 6:40 a.m., the sun pressed a hot stripe across the floorboards. We were 11 hours from vows. Alex kissed my forehead, told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him, and ran out the door to check the sound. I sat there, bare feet on cold wood, the bourbon glass still on the counter, the mirror still holding a man who had learned something you only learn once. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I stood, folded the tux jacket with steady hands, and placed it on the chair like an artifact from a civilization that didn't survive. I texted the planner, all set, running a tad behind, will be there soon. He thought I was planning a wedding. Something in me had already held the funeral. By noon the next day, Juniper Ridge looked like a promise no one could afford. Vendors crossed the lawn with crates of glass, a quartet rehearsed under the oaks. I kept moving, because stopping meant touching the bruise inside my chest. Alex ran to the estate office for 5 minutes and vanished for 90. When he returned, he had that calm I used to mistake for competence. He kissed my cheek, mint again. Sound check at 3, he said. You good? Perfect, I lied. I took his car to the Catarahai's idea. Halfway down the drive, a rideshare pulled in. Tyler hopped out with another man mid-20s, dressed to disappear. They didn't head for the tent. They moved toward the guest cottages. A minute later, Alex texted, grab extra candles. I pulled over behind the hedges and felt the ground tilt. I didn't confront, I followed. They slipped into our cottage without knocking. No curtains, from the oak's shadow, phone in my palm. I watched shapes move, heard laughter that strips paint. I hit record, not for revenge, for reality, so I couldn't talk myself out of what was true. When they were done, they left by the side gate like housekeepers. I walked in, set my phone on the dresser, and washed my hands until the water ran cold. The mirror gave me a man alert enough to read a storm from the color of the air. Back at the lawn, a server clipped a lighter too close to a garland. In a corner of the terrace went up with a soft whoosh. Smoke rolled under the canopy. The quartet stopped mid-bar. I grabbed a fire extinguisher and pressed the lever until the hiss ate the flames. Good reflexes, someone said behind me. A man in his 40s, compact, steady eyes, black polo with a silver badge. No operations. He took the canister, checked the gauge. You okay? Fine, I said, my voice borrowing from another room. Not prying, just present, he nodded. Well run a sweep. Wind sneaks a spark where it shouldn't. He moved with a radio at his shoulder, quiet authority in every glance. It shouldn't have made me feel safer. It did. The chaos bought me cover. While staff reset linens, I slipped into the garage where Alex kept event supplies. The glove box stuck on the first tug. On the second it dropped open. A cheap black phone, no lock screen. No shame, threads stacked like receipts. Names as emojis, you free later. Your mouth is heaven. He thinks him working late. I made it 4 conversations before my vision narrowed. Then I saw the name I didn't expect, Liam, my brother, coy, then obvious, then impossible to misread. Drinks Hubers, don't tell, you're special. The phone grew heavy in my hand, as if grief had weight and metal could hold it. I photographed everything, messages, transfers, timestamps. I forwarded copies to a buried email I hadn't touched since grad school, wiped my prints with the hem of my shirt, and put the phone back exactly where it had slept. On the path to the cottage, Noah checked a fire sensor near a tent pole. All clear, he said to his radio, then to me, you're the groom, right? I nodded. Pete Noah, he said, though I already knew. His gaze ticked to my hands, as if he could see the shake I wouldn't allow. Well, keep eyes on open flame until rehearsal. You should eat. Later, I said. He stepped aside, but didn't retreat. If you need anything, I'm around. I wanted to say I didn't need anything. I wanted to say I had it under control. What came out was softer. Thanks. Dusk cut the oaks into paper shapes. Alex kissed my hair for a camera. I touched his wrist and counted, out of nowhere, the beats of his pulsifast. You're tense, I said. Big day, he replied, eyes skipping to the catering manager. We good, we're great, I said, and felt the words harden as they left. That night I printed, quiet, screenshots into folders labeled like gifts for the florist, for his boss, for my family. I didn't know if I'd use them. I only knew the truth couldn't live in one device and a body that had already lied to me. Near midnight, a soft knock. Noah stood on the porch, rain starting like static. He held a small wrapped box. Your planner asked me to drop this, he said. Customized vow cards. Thanks, I said, taking the weight. He hesitated. You sure you're okay? I looked at the ribbon, then at him. Not really. He didn't crowd the doorway. If you need to walk, the east path's lit. Fewer people. Practical, not intimacy. And somehow both. After he left, I set the box beside the printer and stared at the blank cards through the lid. I used to believe words could build a life. Tonight they felt like fence pickets around something already burning. I opened my laptop and kept going. Backups, redundancies, quiet bombs that only go off when you pretend you never built them. Sometime after the fourth folder, my phone lit with a message from Alex. Can't sleep. Come over. I let it dim. I was busy mapping the wreckage he arranged and calling it love. Morning rehearsal felt like theater in a language I no longer spoke. Guests began drifting into the estate early, snapping photos, sipping mimosas. Alex moved among them like a politician, handakes, laughter, kisses on the cheek. I stayed near the terrace, where I could see everything without being seen. I hadn't slept. My printer still hummed in my head, feeding page after page of proof into neat stacks. Every time Alex touched someone's shoulder, I remembered his messages. Every time he smiled, I saw the boy at the door in the rain. Noah found me near the catering tents. You eat yet? He asked. I shook my head. He handed me a plate of fruit heads stolen from the staff table. Sugar helps when you haven't slept. I wanted to brush him off. Instead, I took a slice of orange, chewed slowly, let the sourness cut through the fog. He stood beside me, not watching me directly, but scanning the crowd like a man whose job was both safety and silence. His presence steadied me in a way I hadn't expected. Alex called across the lawn, Pete, come here a sec. His tone was bright, but I caught the flicker in his eye-checking if I was where he thought I should be. I waved back, pretended I hadn't heard the command. Noah smirked. He likes control, huh? The words landed like a pebble on water, ripples spreading farther than they should. I didn't answer. Later, when the rehearsal wound down, Noah caught me near the east path Head mentioned. Walk, he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. We moved under string lights that hummed against the dusk. The air smelled faintly of smoke from last night's accident, but it felt cleaner away from the noise. You look like a man holding something heavy, he said finally. I laughed short and sharp, that obvious only if you know what to look for. His eyes met mine, steady, not prying just there. For a moment I wanted to tell him everything, the clinic, the phone, Liam, the vow cards that felt like gravestones. But the words stuck. Instead I said, he's not who people think he is. Noah didn't blink. Most men aren't. We stopped at a bend in the path, where lanterns threw soft gold across the gravel. He leaned against a post, arms folded, shoulders solid. I realized I was standing too close, or maybe not close enough. Pete, he said quietly, whatever's happening, you don't have to carry it alone. His voice hastened a promise. It was an invitation. I looked away, up at the dark outline of the trees, back at him. The silence between us wasn't empty. It hummed alive, dangerous. When he shifted closer, our arms brushed. Just fabric against fabric, but I felt it like current. He didn't pull back, neither did I. For the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. My breath came easier. I wasn't safe, but I wasn't drowning either. We walked back without speaking. At the edge of the lawn, Alex was laughing with Tyler, too loud, too rehearsed. He glanced at me, then at Noah, eyes narrowing for a split second before his smile returned. Everything okay? Alex asked. Perfect, I said. My voice didn't shake. Noah gave a small nod and melted into the staff crowd, leaving me with the echo of his words and the heat where his sleeve had brushed mine. I told myself it was nothing, just exhaustion, just nerves, but when I lay down that night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the walls, the memory of his voice stayed with me. Not a promise, not a threat, something far more dangerous. Hope. The morning of the rehearsal dinner should have been routines, small talk, laughter, too many photos. Instead, every detail felt sharpened, like the air itself was trying to cut me. Alex was restless, snapping at staff, fidgeting with his tie. I knew why. He could sense the distance growing, even if he didn't know the full shape of it. At brunch, he leaned close, whispered against my ear, we should run away, forget this circus, just us. His breath carried mint gum again. That brand had become its own language. I smiled like it was a joke. Inside, something broke louder than his words. I slipped away after the speeches, telling him I needed air. The truth, I needed to see if my instincts were right. His gym bag was in the closet of the cottage, half-zipped. Beneath the folded clothes, under a tank still damp from sweat, was another phone, sleeker than the burner in his glove box. No lock, no hesitation, the screen lit with everything I feared and more encrypted apps, folders labeled like projects, transfers to names I didn't know. Photos that didn't look posed, boys too young to look so hollow. My chest tightened as I scrolled, until I saw my own name, reduced to a note, public cover, keep steady, don't scare. I dropped the phone back, hands cold. The floor seemed to tilt. For a long moment, I just stood there, waiting for my body to remember how to breathe. When I finally moved, I wasted the same man who had walked in. That evening, Alex was all charm again, pouring bourbon, telling stories to my parents like nothing in the world could touch him. I watched from across the room, every word sour. My mother laughed at his jokes. My father raised a glass. And I sat there thinking, they don't know Thayer clinking glasses with a predator. I left early, claiming fatigue. Outside, the night air was heavy, the lawn still damp from sprinklers. Noah was at the gate, flashlight in hand. "You all right?" he asked. "No," I said before I could stop myself. The honesty startled me. He studied my face, then lowered his voice. "Whatever you're holding gets bigger than you think." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Because men like him don't stop," Noah said simply. "They collect, they calculate, and they always think Thayer untouchable. For a second, I thought he knew everything." My heart raced. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've seen it before," he said. He didn't explain further. He didn't have to. The weight in his voice told me enough. When Alex found me later, he slipped an arm around my waist. "Too tight? Too rehearsed?" "Where'd you disappear to?" he asked. "Just walking," I said. His eyes darted toward the path where Noah had stood, then back to me. His smile stayed on his lips, but not in his eyes. "Be careful who you talk to," he murmured, almost tender. Almost it wasn't a warning. It was a claim. That night, lying in separate beds for tradition, I stared at the ceiling and realized the bond I thought we had was gone. What remained was scaffolding built from lies, waiting for the right moment to collapse, and when it did, I wouldn't be under it. I'd be the one pulling it down. The knock came at 1 a.m., fast and apologetic. I was still up, the vow cards on the table like blank headstones. A boy 18, soaked hoodie, eyes darting, stood on the step. "Is this Alex's place? He said you'd be at the main house." "I'm here," I said. He tried to smile. Shame beat him to it. He said I was different, that he never "You're not safe here tonight." I wrote a burner email on a place card and pressed it into his palm. "If you need help, write. No names, but go." He whispered sorry and disappeared into rain. I locked the door. Rage thinned to a blade. By sunrise I wasn't collecting. I was staging. 3 encrypted folders mirrored to 3 drives. A printed packet for each table, Captain. Blackhand. Wiker cards pointing to a vault with messages, transfers, photos, the second phone's gallery. I nudged the rehearsal on Alex's shared calendar. 30 minutes later, just enough to make him late and off. Balance. Timers, backups, quiet explosives disguised as stationary. At 8, I found Noah at the service gate with a thermos and that steady, unbothered calm. He clocked the dark under my eyes and said, "Walk." Lanterns hummed along the east path. We moved without talking until the bend. "You look like a man who chose," he said. I did. "Then you'll need steady hands." He poured coffee into the lid and passed it to me. Our fingers touched. Warmth reached my wrist like permission. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," I said. "You don't need to," he answered. "You only need to arrive." We returned in silence. His sleeve grazed my shoulder. No promised presence. By noon, the estate woke. Hunger trucks, strings, guests eager for selfies. Alex kept scanning for me as if my absence could rattle his smile. I kept moving. In the printer room behind the ballroom, I left a banker's box labeled ceremony scripts. Inside, 30 stapled pages, screenshots arranged by date, yellow highlights like live wires. On top, a 1-page index. The last line carried a name I didn't want to see lie. Am. In the cottage, I slid her cards into escort envelopes. The door opened without a knock. "Alex, tradition says we shouldn't see each other," he said, smiling too wide. "But I missed you." I palmed the stack and leaned against the table. "You bend tradition when it suits you." He laughed, searching my face for warmth and finding glass. His fingers lingered at my collarbone. "We okay, of course." The truth needed 12 more hours of quiet. "Go check the quartet." He kissed my cheek and left. My knees argued with gravity until the latch clicked. An envelope slid off the stack. A card flashed up at me like a mirror. I pictured his thumb brushing the paper, the vault blooming open on his phone, the whole thing detonating too early. I retied the ribbon, made my hands stop shaking, and counted to 10 twice. On my windshield, tucked under the wiper, a note waited in block letters. "You don't know the half of it." "Call me." "No name. A number." I dialed from the driver's seat. "You actually called." A man tired in the way only experience teaches. Who is this? Someone who used to believe him. Someone he paid to stay quiet. The air narrowed. He doesn't just cheat. The voice went on. "He recruits. New in town, broke, unmoored. He offers rent, attention, the feeling of being chosen. He keeps notes, he keeps leverage, I've seen notes. Then you've seen the folder marked insurance. I hadn't. The word lodged behind my ear. What is it? Backups, compromising video, stolen passwords, copies mirrored to a cloud he thinks only he knows. Why tell me? Because you sound like you're about to strike a match, he said. And he made me into a room full of gasoline. Static hissed. Check his gym bag in her pocket, and don't do this alone. I already checked, I said. Am not alone. Silence then. Good. He's never as calm as he looks. The line died. I found no one near the loading dock, showing a new hire how to reset a breaker. When we were alone, I said, I might trigger something ugly. You already lived ugly, he said. What you're about to do is daylight. He didn't touch me, he didn't have to. The space between us charged like air before rain. By evening, rehearsal ran like a show that had forgotten it was pretend. I stood under the arch while the planner moved my hands like props. Alex delivered his lines with trembling beauty. People cried on cue it would have been perfect if it had been true. I smiled for photos. I thanked the caterer. I slid the last cards under plates, set the final timers, and placed the banker's box where the curious would always look first. When Alex asked where I'd gone, I gave him a truth that wasn't the whole truth. I had things to finish. Near midnight, the cottage held its breath. The printer was finally quiet. I took out the vow cards and wrote 3 sentences, not a promise, not forgiveness. A map. Tomorrow I would stop pretending had built a home. Tomorrow I would hand them the blueprint. I signed my name and after a long minute crossed it out. The morning of the wedding broke too still. No breeze, no bird call, only the rustle of linens being tied to chairs. Juniper Ridge had the hush of a stage before curtains rise. I dressed slowly, fingers careful on each button. The tuxedo felt heavier than cloth, more like armor. Guests arrived in Waves College friends, co-workers, distant family had flown in for spectacle more than love. Alex worked the crowd with practiced charm. He hugged my mother, shook my father's hand, kissed his boss' cheek. No one saw the sweat at his temples, the way his smile twitched, but I saw everything. When the quartet began, we took our places under the arch of white orchids. Alex's eyes shimmered like glass. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, he said softly, rehearsed and trembling. He began his vows, words about faith, forever, gratitude. They almost sounded real, and then the chime began. 100 phones buzzed at once. Guests glanced down. Some frowned, some gasped. A ripple swept through the crowd. Screens lit with screenshots, messages, photos, bank transfers. Names proof dropped into every lap like confetti soaked in gasoline. Alex froze mid. Sentence. What? I stepped forward, folder in hand. I wrote something too. I handed the first packet to my mother. Another to his boss, another to Liam. Pages of truth, organized, highlighted, undeniable. Murmurs grew into questions, gasps into sharp exclamations. Alex grabbed my wrist. What are you doing? His voice cracked fury beneath the whisper. Showing them who you are, I said. He turned to the guests. This is a lie. Hesh is paranoid. Unstable, tell them about the second phone I cut in. The color drained from his face. Tell them about the boys you recruited, the one you brought to our house at 1 a.m. My voice was steady, too steady. Gasps tore through the rows. Some filmed, some covered their mouths. Liam dropped his packet on the ground, pale as chalk. Alex's hand shook as he raised it. The slap landed sloppy, grazing my jaw. Gasps again, louder now. Security moved in, chairs scraped. The officiant stammered for order. Alex struggled against the hands holding him. His voice cracked into rage. You don't know what you've ruined. I leaned close enough for only him to hear. Everything you built was already ash. I just showed them the smoke. They dragged him back, thrashing. His tie hung loose, his face twisted with something between fury and desperation. Guests whispered, some filming, some frozen. The silence after each word felt louder than the words themselves. I didn't speak again. I just looked at them awfully, strangers, ghosts, and nodded once. Then I stepped off the stage, down the aisle that should have carried me into forever, and out into the backstage quiet. In the dressing room, I pulled off the boutonniere and laid it on the table. Outside, chaos hummed phones ringing, voices rising, questions without answers. I sat, head in my hands, and waited for a feeling that never came. Not relief, not triumph, only quiet. When the guests finally dispersed and the estate hushed again, I checked my phone. 43 new messages. Headlines already spreading. Wedding scandal stuns Nashville tech exec. One outlet called it the most brutal takedown in wedding history. At the bottom of the screen, one unread message. From Alex, you ruined my life, now ill ruin yours, no sigh. Noff, just a threat. I set the phone face down on the table. Sunlight cut bars across the floor, sharp and cold. The vows were never spoken, the wedding never finished. But the war had only just begun. Morning staged the cottages after. My tux jacket on the chair, the boutonniere browning beside my phone. Alec's last text still glowed. You ruined my life, now ill ruin yours. Outside, crews unbuilt, our future a tear scraped, glass chimed. The burner email pinged, the boy from the rain, okay, going home, blocked him. 3 breathless lines that finally made my hands shake. Then a second email to my real address. No sender, no body and attachment. Insurance zip, it asked for a code. I stared long enough that my reflection swallowed the screen. A knock, firm. Noah stood there, wind in his hair. You shouldn't be alone. Am not, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. He came in, close but not touching. Hell flipped the story. Smear first, never apologize. You have counsel. I shook my head. He put a card on the table. Use her and don't answer unknown numbers. My phone buzzed as if on cue. Unknown number. We were calm. It buzzed again, then a text arrived. 6 digits, no context. Trap, Noah said, or a key, I answered. We packed the essentials drifts, copies, vow cards with my name crossed out. The lawn had turned to a grid of pale rectangles where chairs had been. Somewhere down the road, a camera clicked and hid. At his truck, Noah rested his hand on the frame. If you get in, we don't look back for a while. Wind slid under my collar. I climbed in. We rolled past the oaks and the tasteful gold sign that still said congratulations. My phone lay face down between us, pulsing once, like a small animal asking to be fed. I turned it over. The code watched me. The archive waited. Do we open it? He asked. Not yet. We drove until the estate became a rumor in the mirror. Ahead, the sky looked like a blank card. Noah's shoulder sat near mine, steady, warm-proof, that presence can be a shelter without being a promise. Another message appeared, 2 words, tick-tock.